Okay, so we don't have an art slides lecture this week, but we do, however, have quite a lot of reading. Um, so I wanted to take a minute just to sort of briefly go over some of our readings this week and try to get a better idea of how they all fit together, and why we're reading them all in one week. All right, so we have three sort of different types of readings this week. We have history, philosophy, and drama. History is just from our West in the World textbook. There's only 2 pages. We've actually covered these pages before, but they are well worth reading again, just to reorient ourselves as to where we are historically. Uh, and then we also have some philosophical readings. We have two from Socrates. We have Crito and Phaedo. We also have The Republic by Plato and Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. And then lastly, we have Antigone by Sophocles, which is one of the 3 Theban plays, one of which we read last week, Oedipus the King. So obviously this is sort of a wide spread of reading that we have here. Typically we're either just in West in the World and maybe we have a little something extra to read. But this week we have 3 very different types of readings. So to begin, we have 3 philosophers that we're looking at this week. You'll hear from Dr. Edmondson and Dr. Kennison about them later on. But wanted to give a quick background on each of these 3 philosophers. So we have Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So if you'll remember, Socrates is our street philosopher, and he is best known for the Socratic method, which is what we call it now. So he sort of had this idea that we could teach people rather than just lecturing, rather than just telling them everything, giving them all the information. People could learn by being questioned. So he would sort of travel around with a group of students and ask them very pointed questions and help them work through the logic of answering their own questions. And this is what we call the Socratic method. You'll see it displayed in both Crito and Phaedo. He spends a lot of time asking questions and helping them draw out answers. And then Plato actually wrote most of what we know about Socrates. So Crito and Phaedo, the 2 pieces that we'll read from Socrates this week, were actually written by Plato, but he was just recording dialogues from Socrates, his instructor. And Plato is most known for his work, The Republic, in which he sort of lays out his ideal form of society, which is very rigid, very inspired by Sparta. And then lastly, we have Aristotle. Aristotle was a student of Plato. He was a tutor to Alexander the Great. And he is best known for his book, Nicomachean Ethics. He worked a lot within the realm of ethics, and we will read a portion of Nicomachean Ethics this week. So these are the 3 that we need to know: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. All right, so back to this timeline that I'm pretty sure I've shown you all just about every day for the last 2 weeks. Just good to maintain some context. So we have Greek colonization from 750 to 500 BCE, and this is coming out of the Dark Ages. And so this is when we see independent city-states popping up in Greece. And then we have the Persian Wars from 490 to 479 BCE. And this is when it's after this period in the Greek classical age, when Athens really rises to power from the Delian League. And so we have the Golden Age of Athens from 479 to 431 BCE, and that comes to an end with the Peloponnesian War, which goes from 431 to 404 BCE. And again, the Peloponnesian War was really a challenge to Athenian power. So we're going to add some things to this timeline today. So Socrates is born in 470 BCE, so he's right there in the middle of the golden age of Athens, which is important to how he understands the world and how his philosophy is shaped. So again, remember, he's raised in this time when Athens is very powerful, very wealthy. It's sort of the peak of civilization. But during his lifetime, he sees that civilization go into decline through the Peloponnesian War. And then his student, Plato, is born in 428 BCE, so just after the start of the Peloponnesian War. So Plato grows up in this very turbulent time filled with, lots of anxiety, lots of death, and that will certainly shape his philosophy, as we will see later this week. So again, he never gets to see Athens in its golden age, but he certainly sees it through its decline and its end of the Peloponnesian War. And lastly, we have Aristotle, who again is a student of Plato, and he is born in 384 BCE. So by this time, the Peloponnesian War has been over for about 20 years, and Athens is sort of a military state being controlled by Sparta. So Aristotle will have a very different view of life than his two predecessors, Socrates and Plato, because all he knows is Athens after its fall from glory. All right. So now we're going to start incorporating aspects of drama into our timeline here. So we have three plays, Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Oedipus at Colonus, all three of which are written by the playwright Sophocles. And together they form what we call the Theban plays because they primarily take place in Thebes. So Antigone premiered first in 441 BCE, so it is the earliest of the three plays, despite the fact that it comes last in the trilogy. And this primarily deals with Oedipus's daughter Antigone after he has been exiled from Thebes, and she is then dealing with the deaths of her two brothers. And some of the themes that arise in this play are those of natural law and loyalty. So that will be important to consider. We will be reading Antigone this week and discussing it at length later on. And then Oedipus the King was premiered in 429 BCE. And as we talked about last week when we read it, the primary themes are fate versus free will and guilt. And then lastly, Oedipus at Colonus premiered in 401 BCE. It is one of the last plays that Sophocles writes, and features themes of atonement and wisdom. So this one sort of happens in between Oedipus the King and Antigone. It picks up when Oedipus is leaving Thebes after having blinded himself. He wanders to the city of Colonus, and the play is mostly his interactions with people there as he reflects on the events of his life. All right, so returning to this timeline again, so remember we've got Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle thrown in here. So now we're going to incorporate our plays. So 441 BCE, Antigone premieres. So you'll see this is like Socrates, this happens firmly within the golden age of Athens. And remember that some of the themes here are loyalty, sort of political loyalty, loyalty to one's family, and natural law. So you can see how those might be important things. They might be at the top of the sort of social consciousness during the golden age of Athens. Things are going pretty well. So we want to be loyal to the state. We want to be loyal to our families. We want to respect the natural order of things as we perceive it. And then 429 BCE, Oedipus the king premieres. So this is just a few years after the start of the Peloponnesian War, but it's already becoming clear that Athens is in decline. This empire that they've built is being challenged, and some of the more thoughtful people, some of the philosophers and the playwrights, are maybe seeing that maybe the power that Athens has developed is not so great. So we see a distinct shift here in themes from Oedipus the King, where it's mostly fate versus free will. We're really considering, do we actually have control over our lives? We're maybe feeling guilt for some of the things that we've done, whereas Antigone is certainly still a tragedy, but its themes are a little more positive than the themes that we get from Oedipus the King. And then lastly, we have Oedipus at Colonus, which is a little more reflective. It happens premieres in 401 BCE, so just after Athens has been defeated, so they're being controlled by Sparta at this point. And it's a much more reflective play, or looking back and saying, maybe things didn't go the way that we wanted them to go. Perhaps we're to blame, and maybe we need to have a different outlook on things moving forward. So this week is really is sort of a good example of the work that we want to be doing, the things that we want to be considering in our humanities courses. If you remember, at the beginning of the semester, we threw out this term holistic. We want to have holistic educations, and that just means that they are whole, that we are looking at subjects from more than one perspective. And this week is a really good example of that. We're looking at this one period of time through 3 different lenses. We've got a historical lens where we just want to know who was doing what, when, and where. And we're looking at it through a philosophical lens. So we're reading philosophy. We're trying to understand what people were thinking about life at this time. And we also are going to look at it through drama, through art, to see how they were expressing themselves creatively. And these 3 things sort of come together so that we can get a more holistic understanding of what was going on then, of what these people valued, and what their lives looked like. So hopefully this is helpful to you all as we read Antigone this week, and all of these sort of dense philosophical texts. I look forward to breaking them down with you all later on this week.